Barry is the Equality and Access Officer at the V&A, where he was worked for 2002. The role is varied, dealing with all the aspects of the museum's work, including development policy and strategy, design of building and galleries, staff training, and advising on accessible talk programs. Barry became a member of the Built Environment Access Panel for the London Legacy Development Corporation in February 2012, has been appointed as an advisor to the Paralympic Legacy Advisor Group.
Well, good morning, everybody, and once again, it's nice to be able to come and present what the Victoria and Albert Museum in London sort of does and provides for disabled people. So my first slide is just the V&A logo, and I'll refer to us as the V&A as opposed to the Victoria and Albert Museum. We call ourselves the world's greatest museum of art and design. I'll leave that open to you to see whether we are or not, but that's what my bosses tell us we are. So on screen is our logo, and also it's a photo of the front entrance at the V&A, which was one of our big sort of projects on accessibility, which I'll talk about shortly. But I'm now going to sort of talk for 12 minutes on 12 years of working at the museum. And my first approach was to develop a strategy that fits accessibility into the museum's day-to-day work. You know, it wasn't to literally turn the museum upside down and annoy people by saying you have to do this, you have to do that. So what I did was visited every department, spoke to key people to see what they provided for disabled people, or they may not have had anything. So that was part of the action plan process. So I wrote an action plan which was submitted to our management board in 2002, and it was to cover a 3-year period, and it looked at the practical goals that we wanted to achieve to make the museum more accessible. But also it set out the business, legal and moral cases on disability. And it must have worked, because my finance director told me to go and see him afterwards, and he gave me £100,000 increase in budget. So he was a lovely man. And of which, you know, enabled me to fulfil a lot of the goals within the action plan. And he says, for years 2 and 3, come back and we'll see what we can do. And we made great strides, and they realised that, you know, I wasn't going to sort of ask for the whole building to be knocked down, because the V&A is a Grade 1 listed heritage site. So developing the strategy was an important step for us becoming more accessible. Next slide. My next slide looks at our future plan. Now, future plan is it's now our ongoing project. It was initially a 10-year project to redevelop the South Kensington site, making it more accessible, but also to redisplay of the galleries. And in the past 10 years, we've spent £160 million, it's probably 250 million Canadian dollars, on making 7 miles of gallery space accessible. So, you know, we're completely wheelchair accessible, and I'll talk a bit later about how we've developed interpretation. But the aim of Future Plan was not just to, you know, make the building look pretty, but it was also to, you know, improve the access, redisplay the galleries, and where possible, comply with the Disability Discrimination Act, which was the major piece of legislation that drove our work, and also Part M of the building regulations, which states sort of accessibility in the for buildings. The Act often said comply, but how can you comply with legislation? You know, I'm sure you've heard in many a talk in the conference so far, complying with legislation or guidance is almost impossible because it's not a one-size-fits-all. But the success, as I say, we've made 100% wheelchair accessibility to the museum. We've installed lifts, ramps, so on. So, you know, that's you know, a great step forward, especially for a complicated building such as the V&A. And interpretation to the collection, you know, is firstly making it more relevant to people, but secondly, sort of making it accessible and intellectually accessible to disabled people that can't see into cases. So sort of getting touch objects and using some original and replica objects. You know, so therefore, you know, I can go as a blind person to the museum and sort of interpret part of our collection. So therefore, I can say I enjoyed that visit, as opposed to, well, somebody described objects in glass cases to me. So, you know, we've looked at the visitor experience. Next slide, please. The photo I've just put up on screen is of a Ming vase that is on display in. So, all right. So, oh, sorry, it's our main entrance. Sorry. So I'm getting ahead of myself. Which is to you know, highlight you know, sort of how accessibility is being built into that space, but it's you know, still a good-looking space. I forgot. Yeah. So we've looked at strategy and our future plan. There's policy and practice that we need to introduce. And again, this was framed by the Disability Discrimination Act. But you know, it's great just having a piece of legislation. It's the practical implementation. So the government's Department of Work and Pensions developed a programme called the Double Tick, Positive by Disabled People programme. And this was where disabled people, if you're looking for an employment or within already in an organisation, we make reasonable adjustments so you can sort of be able to carry out your role. So this might be through using a support worker, etc. And since we introduced that programme, we've increased our staffing levels from 2% to 6%. So, you know, we've made significant progress. We installed a fire pager system which alerts deaf people to the fire evacuation alarm. And again, this is so therefore people can sort of get information at real time and start sort of moving to the exit. I mentioned briefly earlier our interpretation policy and sort of looking at touch objects, etc. And now if we can bring the next one, which this should be the Ming vase that I built you up to. And this is an original Ming vase from 1550. Anybody can touch it. It's in open display within the gallery. And, you know, we have secured it very well because we don't want people walking off with it and, you know, including it in their own collection. So, you know, I enjoy showing that photo because, you know, people say, Ming vases, you can't display those. Well, that's been on display for 15 years and it's still the same vase. So, you know, we've looked at sort of policies and so on. Next. Yeah, it should. So, as part of our process, we've developed education programs. We have monthly touch tours for vision impaired people and talks in British Sign Language for deaf people. Now, as part of the touch tour programme, we have practical workshops, and these are led by a partially sighted artist, professional artist, and we've done work on photography, ceramics, and so on. For our British Sign Language talks, we have a range of deaf speakers who use British Sign Language and are experts in art, so we employ them to come and give talks. We also provide activity events for people with a learning disability and a mental health issue. So therefore, we're not offering them talks because, you know, some people may not be able to understand what's happening within the talk, so therefore making it more practical makes it more relevant to them. And as of January 2015, we're going to have an artist in residence, and this is looking at inclusive design and product design. And the artist we've chosen, we specified the artist had to have a disability. So the artist we've chosen is actually Canadian, from Vancouver. So from January to March next year, he will be coming to do some practical workshops with people throughout the museum. Next slide. 2 minutes left. Okay. So on screen now is some images of a touch tour and of our British Sign Language events, just to show sort of, you know, them in action. So, but we can't sort of put these facilities and services on without our staff, and the training we provide staff is literally to break down attitudinal barriers. So our training starts from our staff induction program. I offer general disability awareness, visual awareness, deaf awareness, mental health, learning disabilities. We trained 40 of our front of house staff in level 2 British Sign Language to help with that customer welcome. And then most of them left, which was a bit disappointing. But, you know, the commitment's there. And last week I ran an accessibility training program with a deaf blind charity called Sense in the UK, and it was aimed at sort of getting more families into the museum. And then I'm almost finished, so if we go to the next slide. So on this slide we have a couple of our staff under blindfold training which we run, so therefore they understand how to guide blind people. We use people sort of use our wheelchairs as well, so people can get an understanding from that. And then if we go on to my final slide, it's what our visitors say. And would you be able to read that for me, please, Hannah? Sure. Hannah's going to read these comments to us because I think it actually sort of brings alive everything that we've said.
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for arranging the wheelchair on Friday. We arrived at midday, and thanks to the use of the chair, did not leave until nearly 5 p.m. It made a huge difference to the day. Second quote. I visited the David Bowie exhibition at the V&A on 19th May with my wife and her hearing dog. I would like to express my gratitude to all your staff who we met on the night. They were friendly and helpful, especially when my wife needed a loop instead of the conventional audio guide to take into exhibition. And the last one, I must say I'm very impressed with the service the museum offers disabled people. Prior to my illness, I worked for the European Commission as a policy officer in the disability unit, and I can tell you that not many organizations offer as much support to disabled people.
And I think that's a good place for me to finish, so thank you.
Écoutez, je prendrai une question ou un commentaire et puis ensuite, je vais demander à Mme O.L. Corvès de prendre la parole. S'il vous plaît, Madame. Oui, le micro, est-ce qu'on peut... Oui, désolé, ça sera vous par la suite.
I'm just curious as to how your fire pager system works. Do you hand out a contraption at the opening, or how do people identify that they need it? Are there signs up? How does it work?
Okay, we advertise the pager system on our website, and you'll have to come to my next talk at 3:30 to see how we do that. Just a prompt for that. But also, no, we do advertise it, and it's in some of our literature. And what happens is when the fire alarm goes off, the pager will vibrate, it will flash, and for somebody that does have some slight hearing, it will actually beep as well. And then it has, on an LED, it says evacuate. Now, it's linked up to our full alarm system because we have a 2-zone system. So from one of our zonal alarms and then our full alarm, it goes off at the first alarm with zonals. So therefore, I'd rather people be making their way to the entrance as soon as the alarm goes off, as a way to having to wait for a full alarm, and then everybody's in a panic to get out.
Thank you. Actually, my question could go to Ms. Goodwin or to the first presentation. I'm interested, I'm all for touch and feel, but I am interested to know, how do you deal with the issue of health issues, wear and tear of the objects in a museum, and especially with so many health issues arising now? How do you deal at a museum with the constant touching and wear and tear of objects? That's my question.
Okay. It depends on our objects and whether they are permanently in the galleries or the fragility of the objects. So for the Ming vase that I displayed, anybody can touch that. It is regularly cleaned to try and, so therefore, it keeps sort of pristine. For some of our objects that normally we don't allow to touch and we use as part of a touch object tour, then we'll ask our visitors to wear gloves. Now, people often say to me, why should a blind person, for example, wear gloves to touch an object? Well, you've got a choice. You either wear the gloves to touch the object or you just don't touch. So being a blind person, I'd rather touch the objects with gloves. So, for the health and sort of safety aspect, that then sort of protects the object as well as it, being a conservation issue for the object. But it's just regular cleaning and having a conservation plan for each of the touch objects.
Une autre question de votre part? Oui, d'accord, excusez-moi, monsieur, le micro vient à vous.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Paul Cormier, je suis formateur pour Kéroul. I'll ask my question in English because I'll address it to Barry. Part of my frustration in visiting London in 2001 was not going to the Victoria and Albert Museum because I could not find information that was clear enough for me to venture out there, as opposed to the easiness in getting into the National Gallery at the time or British Museum. Well, I was staying right next door to the British Museum. So instead I went back to the British Museum time and time again, which was a lot of fun. Now, my question is, and the other panelists are welcome to answer as well. And Anna, you touched upon it. How easy is it for a visitor with a disability to find information on accessibility for your location?
Okay, well, I would say quite easy now that with web accessibility. Literally from our homepage, we have a disability access link, and then that takes you through to a page where it gives you information about how to get to the museum, what facilities are available, whether you're sort of a wheelchair user, British Sign Language user, visually impaired, learning disabilities, etc. And also it offers links to the educational programs that we offer. We also, in our What's On guide, which is published quarterly for every event that the museum provides, and there's information on accessibility and the programs available there as well. So, and then also we do, for people that come to our regular talks, whether British Sign Language, touch tours, so on, we've developed a mailing list for people that have come to those talks, and we send the information out to local societies and sort of disability sort of media. So it's quite comprehensive now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have to go back.
Yep.
Oui.
You're welcome.
Merci beaucoup. Une dernière question avant que l'on termine, et je voudrais m'adresser aux conférenciers dernière seconde. Je vous en prie, monsieur.
Yeah, thank you. It's not really a question. It's just that I fully agree with what the Barry and the previous person who asked the question just stated. Indeed, it is a key thing to have immediate access to the accessibility information. It will always be a matter of finding this confidence that you will find something, but it can indeed help to have on your main web page, on your home page, immediately a button that leads to this kind of information. I think the sooner that you lead people to the right information, the more you will have a successful story here. Thank you.